Okay, good afternoon. My name is Kevin Jacob. I'm the Democratic Services Officer for the Future Oxfordshire Partnership. My colleague Amber, if you could stop sharing the slide now, please. I'm just going to begin the meeting by going through the list of the members, and we've got a number of apologies. So if I start off with, if you could say if you're in the room or present online, Councillor David Ruhane.
Present in the room.
Councillor Bethia Thomas has given her apologies, and we do have, I understand, Councillor Mark Coleman. Present in the room. Okay, thank you. Next we have Councillor Barry Wood, who I understand is present online. I can see Barry, yeah.
Correct.
Thank you. Next we have Councillor Susan Brown.
Yes, present in the room.
Thank you. Next we have Councillor Liz Leffman.
Present in the room.
Thank you. We have apologies from Councillor Andy Graham, who is being substituted by Councillor Duncan Enright.
Yes, present in the room. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Professor Alistair Fitt.
Hello, present in the room.
Excuse me. Next we have apologies from Professor Irene Tracy, who's been substituted by Professor Alex Betts in the room.
Hello, present in the room.
Thank you. We have Miranda Markham, present virtually, I understand.
Present online, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have apologies from Peter Nolan. Angus Horner.
Afternoon, present in the room.
Thank you. We have apologies from Neil Hook from the Homes England. We have Julia Kraus on the call, I understand.
Yes.
Thank you very much indeed. And Julia will be, just to point out, Julia will be taking over as the Homes England representative on the FOP from now on. Next, we have an apology from Dan Leveson, who is being substituted by Chris Wright, who is also in the room.
Yeah, present in the room.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have an apology from Emma Hill from the Environment Agency. We should have Dean Lusby-Gordon on the call or making his way into the call.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Chair. I'll pass back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin, and welcome to Julia and to Chris, for whom I think it is your first meeting. So very nice to see you both. So we've done apologies for absence. Are there any declarations of interest? Duncan.
Yes, I do some work as an associate of something called the CCP, which is a development communications agency, but none of that work is in Oxfordshire or connected to Oxfordshire.
Thank you. And I have no chair's announcements to make. So if we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the minutes, which are on pages 6 to 14, can we agree them as an accurate record? I'm taking that as a yes. So, and does anyone have anything that they wish to raise on those minutes? No. Okay, good. Item 3, public participation. There has not been any requests for any public participation on this particular meeting, so nothing to take at that item. Our next item, Future Oxfordshire Partnership Scrutiny Panel update. I'm going to ask Kevin if he will just very briefly introduce the paper, but we unfortunately haven't got anyone from Scrutiny to talk to us today, but there were no formal recommendations from Scrutiny. So, Kevin, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a great deal to add other than the comments which have been approved by Councillor Miles as a representation of the panel's views have been circulated. They're just focused on the housing and growth deal and schemes that are yet to be funded, the let transition arrangements around the involvement of stakeholders, and referring back to the notes of the Planning Advisory Group from December, they want to make a point around the electrification of East West Rail. That's it in a nutshell, Chair. It's in writing within the agenda.
Yes, thank you. And I know the electrification of the rail is a topic of conversation reasonably frequently at England's economic heartland and many other places. So if it were in our power, I'm sure it would happen, but I don't think it is. Right. Thank you. Did anyone have anything they wanted to respond to on the scrutiny recommendations? Not seeing anything. Fine. Okay, we are on to item 5, the Oxfordshire Housing Growth Deal update at the end of Q3, 23-24. And Lorna, I think you're going to talk us through this.
Good afternoon, thank you. So this report is the regular report on the Housing and Growth Deal and sets out information as at the end of Q3 for 23-24. The report takes us through some of the background, which is the usual position in the report, but just a couple of points to note. In relation to the estimated spend in 23-24, it's estimated 21.1 million was to be spent in this financial year, with a further 54.1 million being spent in 24-25. Annex 1 sets out the grant allocation against each scheme, and it's worth noting to maximise the use of the grant funding for the overall programme that the programme is currently over-profiled by £1.6 million. Section 6 of the report sets out the risk management section, worth noting as part of this report also that since the last report, construction has now started on the Benson Relief Road, Wantage Eastern Link Road, Kidlington Roundabout and the Banbury Road Roundabout. So the FOP is asked just to note the progress in the report and the annexes that are set out. That's it, thank you.
Thanks, Lorna. Has anyone got any questions or comments for Lorna on this report? I could note that last night the planning permission was granted for the Osney to Oxpens Bridge, which I think will be welcome news to the growth, to the future Oxfordshire partnership, as that's was one of the projects that had been early identified as delivering as an important infrastructure project. So hopefully we can now get on with delivering that. So. Okay, anybody got anything else that they want to raise? No? Oh, in which case, we are asked to note the financial position, and can we therefore do that, please? I'm taking silence as assent, but thank you. Okay, we next then move on to the local enterprise partnership functions, transition arrangements. So you're just in time. I think Robin and Chloe are here for this item, so please do join us.
Thank you. So the report in front of you sets out the approach we've taken towards the transition of LEP functions. So you'll be aware that in August 2023, government confirmed that from April this year that their sponsorship on funding of the local enterprise partnerships will cease. So alongside that, there's been associated guidance published, and what that sets out is that those functions will move to the county council. Given that guidance, what we've done and undertaken with colleagues in Oxlep is developing up a revised governance model, which is set out in the paper today. And as part of that model, the county council has taken a decision to take a controlling interest in Oxlep. But to enable that to happen, Oxlep board have had to have a vote to agree to change their articles of association. So both of those have now happened and been agreed over the past week. And then what that approach enables to do is to keep the engagement we've got at board level, preserve the expertise we've got within the LEP as far as we can, but then also to have very much an orderly transfer of functions. And that that transition process is set out in the report. So there's three phases in the report. So the first of which starts very much on the 1st of April, which is the county council to take that controlling interest. The second phase, there'll be further implementation work that needs to be undertaken, but looking at economic planning across Oxfordshire. And we are targeting that in the first 6 months, so by October 2024. And then finally, a third phase is set out in the paper, and that's looking at a revised operating model, structure and governance, and looking at that from October this year towards the end of March 25. So that's very much the 3 phases, and it enables us to have that transfer of the functions to the county council. But I think alongside that, just to say a little bit more about kind of what happens next, there's an opportunity, I think, working with the future Oxfordshire Partnership and other local stakeholders to review the local economic framework that we've got, and to bring those proposals forward as they are developed to the future Oxfordshire Partnership. And I think to facilitate that, what we're proposing is that we develop up a memorandum of understanding between the future Oxfordshire Partnership, the LEP and the councils that would set out the principles and working arrangements that would guide that transition.
Oh, thank you very much, Chloe. That's really helpful. Robin, did you want to add anything? No. Okay. Alistair, I think you indicated earlier that you would like to speak on this, not least as chair of the LEP, and then I'll come to you.
Yes, so I'll just confirm as chair of the LEP what happened at our LEP board meeting last week on the 12th. There were a number of things that we had to do. We had to pass a special resolution to change the articles. This required a 3/4 majority of the 18 directors, and that was duly achieved, so that's been done. The next thing that has been done is I am led to understand we have now completed the process of asking the directors to resign as members, so there is now only one member. If the other members hadn't resigned, they would have been resigned. They would have been thrown out, as it were, on the 1st of April, but that won't now happen because they have all resigned. And the other thing that I have done, along with Nigel Tipple, the chief executive, we spoke to all the employees of the LEP, actually at a meeting on the 13th, to inform them what was happening and how things were going forward and how we were starting the 6-month transition period. And that was all very good and very positive, and they are very bullish. So I think it's fair to say everything that is supposed to have happened has happened, and we go forward. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alistair, and good to hear that staff are in a good place. I'm reassured to hear that. Thank you. Duncan, saw you next.
Yeah, I wanted to put on record the fact that certainly from a West Oxfordshire perspective, we've enjoyed a very good relationship with the Oxfordshire LEP, and our economic development team have worked really well with them, and I'd expect that to carry on and even be enhanced by these changes. We'd like to pass on thanks as well to the staff at this juncture, because it must be unsettling for some of them, and to say how valued their work is, and how closely we're working together on things like the Shared Prosperity Fund projects, for example. And it's be really welcome to think about this in the future. I just wanted to share as well a reflection of mine. I was on the county council in the mid-90s, at which point strategic economic development was still a function within the county council, and had a really strong voice and an influence over all the other areas of activity of the council, particularly things like strategic planning and so on. And I look forward to that happening in an even better way than it has in recent years once more. And I would hope as well that as city and districts will feel the benefit of that as well.
Thank you. I will pass that on.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Duncan. So Mark, were you indicating no? If I just stretching, right? Okay, thank you. Has anyone else got any comments or questions at this point? No, I'm not seeing anybody, in which case, thank you very much. We really welcome the progress. I know there's been a huge amount of really hard work to get us to this point, and I don't underestimate how difficult that's been. It's a complicated legal process, And it does seem to me from the outside, can't see the kind of feet paddling under the water, to have been a very smooth process. So well done everybody who's involved, both at the LEP and the County Council. I think we all really appreciate your efforts. We wouldn't necessarily have chosen to go down this route, but we are where we are, and you know, we want to make the best of it and make sure that the LEP continues to go from strength to strength, because as Duncan says, it's been an incredibly valuable part of our local economy, and we hope that we can strengthen that rather than lose any of the momentum that we've had over the years. So thank you very much. Right, I think we're just simply being asked to note the progress on this. So I take it we are happy to do that. Good. We are then on to the advisory group updates, which is the next item on the agenda. The first one is the infrastructure advisory group. Liz, you chair that. Over to you.
Thank you very much. You'll have had in the supplementary papers the minutes from the 17th of January meeting, but we've had a meeting since then, so I'll just update you on that as well. But just to say, before I do that, one of the items on the 17th of January agenda was the local area energy plans. And this came to the 17th, sorry, the later meeting, which was earlier this month. I have to say there was a huge amount of enthusiasm within the advisory group for looking at local area energy plans, because as we know, there is a bit of a crisis in the county. Grid capacity is very limited. We know that there are solar farms sitting there that can't get connection to the grid. We know that there are building sites that can't get connection. And it is actually going to turn into a major crisis in the future if we don't do something about it. So I believe that this is going to be a topic on the agenda for the next FOP meeting, so I won't say anything further about that, but I would emphasise just how enthusiastic the advisory group is about taking this forward and how important we believe it is. And in the context of that, we also discussed at the last meeting the funding that we've received, that the County Council's received of 3.655 million, which is going to go towards delivering micro hubs across the county. We approached parish councils, we approached charities, I think the district councils have been involved in this as well, about whether or not they wanted to have a hub, a small hub of electric power points in their own, on their own premises. And we had a very strong response. There's a general view that this is something people want to do. There's good take up for this. And so what that means is that in some of our smaller towns, smaller villages, I should say, we will actually be introducing charging points, which we're pretty short of across the county. And that's going to go ahead very soon. But we're also going to be making applications for further funding so that we can expand the availability of charging points across the county. So we're very ambitious in what we're going to do. And this came to the last meeting, again, a great deal of enthusiasm from the advisory group on this, because it is absolutely essential that we do get these charging points installed as soon as possible. So there's been a slight change in that originally it was intended those charging points would effectively be owned by the premises that have them. And that turned out to be rather complicated, as you can imagine. So the County Council will install those power points, and they'll negotiate with the individuals as to how the electrical connection is managed and how it's paid for, etc. But it's a very exciting development, and it means that we're going to have power for electric vehicles in places such as where I live, where I can't plug if I had an electric car, I couldn't plug it in at the moment because I have nowhere to plug it. But there will be an opportunity in some of the smaller communities to do that. So that's the main thing that came out of that meeting, Chair. And as I say, the local area energy plans will be coming back to the next meeting.
That's really good to hear. Thank you very much. It might be useful to share actually at this point that with one of my many hats is chair of Fast Growth Cities. And with that hat on, we've been doing quite a bit of lobbying work on the grid, which is an issue which is common across the patch for any growing economy is going to be facing some of these problems, and more, I have to say, at the other end of the ARC than us, but beginning to be us too, water as well. But specifically around the grid, I've been doing some work on that, and I have very recently did an interview with the Observer, which resulted in an article in the Observer, and also I'm doing an interview with the Guardian, which we'll publish at some point as well. So there is, you know, just to add that we're also trying to sort of do our bit to raise this issue up the political agenda, and I've certainly met with shadow ministers on this as well, because I think it's important that people understand how much of a hindrance this is becoming to housing and to the economy more generally, and it is a really significant issue. So really grateful to hear about the work that the Infrastructure Advisory Group are doing on this. Duncan.
Yes, I'd like to back that up. Actually, so the national announcements about the grid investment are welcome, but there's a lot of work to do. I don't envy their job, actually. In our area, we have a major employer, Formula One team, who are, because of their rural location as well, have additional problems in getting power supply to meet their needs. And so it's something that really potentially could hold back that. But it's something as well, I'm sure actually that the LEP could help with, in the sense of being a voice for business in terms of making the case for investment in the grid right across the county, and that's in the city as well as beyond. I have a question about the EV charging micro hubs. Are they going to be quick ones, or are they going to be overnighters?
There will be quick ones.
Although I understand with the quick ones, you have to be careful not to use quick ones all the time. But anyway, that's an issue. So Planning Advisory Group, Giles, I think you're going to talk us through this one because Chair is not here. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, the Chair, Andy Graham, he wasn't available for that meeting either. So very grateful to Councillor Louise Upton, who took the chair for the meeting. So thank you to Councillor Upton. The main substantive item that we discussed in the meeting was around viability assessments and viability, which is a key issue, I think, for all the councils in Oxfordshire, because and it's relevant to when we're negotiating Section 106 agreements, when we're producing local plans, when we're reviewing community infrastructure levy. We need to, look at viability as a key factor. And obviously it's really important in terms of our ambitions to deliver infrastructure, to get developer contributions towards that, to deliver affordable housing, and also, in terms of environmental standards and biodiversity net gain. So there's a number of things that where viability is quite an important issue for us to work through. I think that there's been quite a bit of work done by officers to look at how we can support each other, recognising there are, we all have our own individual responsibilities here. The city and the districts, the local planning authorities, so they've got those responsibilities. The county is a key infrastructure provider as well. So we've got individual responsibilities, and the work has identified a range of ways we can try and support each other, probably operational level, support each other in sharing best practice, sharing information to help support each other in being as effective as we can when we're dealing with viability, and also, looking as well at a county level for conversations around the balance between infrastructure and affordable housing and other things, so that we can actually, at least be aware of, our positions and think about the balance to be struck between things as well. So I think that was a really constructive discussion. We also had a presentation about the recent legal decision for the Saltcross Garden Village in West Oxfordshire, which I know very well. And this, for those who don't know, in West Oxfordshire, we've got the Saltcross Garden Village is a proposal that was in our local plan. We're taking forward an area action plan, and we had an inspector's report where the inspector severely changed and watered down one of our key policies on zero carbon standards. A third party group, Right Community Action, challenged that decision through the courts, And interestingly, the courts decided that actually what the inspectors did was wrong, and actually it was the council was perfectly entitled to, we have the potential to set higher standards. I think that the inspector's decision was referring back to a written ministerial statement from 2015, and which the courts held that was so out of date now that wasn't really, shouldn't have been given much weight. So I think it's a positive decision in a sense for others in terms of the principle that councils aren't restricted to just within building regulations, so you have the potential to go over. But there is more recent government guidance that's come out, so you will need to look at questions of viability as well. But it's quite important in terms of that principle of setting high standards is potentially open to us. I think the other important principle for others to be aware is it's the first time that I think someone has challenged an inspector's report back to the inspectorate rather than waiting for the council to adopt the plan and then challenging the council, which to me feels far more appropriate because inspectors' reports are binding. The council can't pick and choose. You have to either adopt it or not. But actually, in this case, the courts found, it was appropriate for people to be able to challenge an inspector's report rather than having to wait for the council to adopt the plan and then challenging the council. So I think that's an important principle as well. We also, moving on, we had when we were talking about the future work programme, the group decided the next meeting we've got, I think in July, we're going to focus on planning for health infrastructure, which is something we discussed before, which is something that has been discussed in this as well, and it's actually an important issue in terms of making sure that when from the council side, when we're planning future development, we're planning for the right models of care that fit the future models of care that the health system see operating, but also we understanding how do we actually make sure that can get delivered. And I know it seems hard to deliver new facilities, a bit easier to expand existing facilities at the moment. And sometimes expanding existing facilities isn't sufficient because they are not suitable or not in the right location. So sometimes we will need to have new facilities, and we need to think about how do we then work as partners, as a system, how do we make sure those can be delivered? So I think the intention would be to get key representatives as well from the Bob ICS involved in that discussion as well, so we can look at, I think, probably a couple of aspects. One is those future models of care which might come out of the the work that's been done on a primary care strategy, and then also that question about how do we actually make sure, how do we go about delivering the infrastructure we need as well. So so that's a flag up as an important future item for the group.
Thank you, Giles. It was a really comprehensive and interesting report. And also, obviously, huge congratulations around Saltcross. I think people across the country were watching that one very, very carefully, and it is great news that it went the way it did. I think it was a really, really important point of principle at stake there. So that was excellent news. And just on the issue of health, I think it would be useful to, as I flagged to you earlier, to potentially invite providers along as well. Whether they'll be able to attend, I don't know, but they obviously got a slightly different role to the ICS, and I think it'd be useful at least to hear their input. So even if they might not have quite such a role in the planning, I think it might be helpful. So, Chris, I don't know if you wanted to add anything at this point.
I think you're probably right. I think the Integrated Care Board quite often is a kind of conduit or representative of healthcare providers and other agencies within Oxfordshire and wider afield. But as you suggested, I think providers probably have a greater grasp of some of the challenges which they face when trying to identify or improve existing estate and accommodation. So we certainly hear some of those messages, pass them on, try to address them as much as possible. But as you mentioned, this isn't a straightforward thing, so I would support that suggestion.
Okay, anyone else on this item? No? Okay, well, it's long been a source of great concern for, I think, everybody on this on this partnership and beyond, in fact, through our councils, to try and get that right relationship between planning and health provisions. So I think there's a huge amount of integration that needs more integration that needs to be done, I think, to get this right. There's obviously huge connections between the quality of housing, for instance, and people's health, people's environment and their health, inequalities, which is something that local councils work to tackle, and health. So, you know, all of these things we need to be working ever more closely together. And I do know that there's another anchor institutions meeting being set up for sometime in April, where I'm sure this will be looked at in the broader sense, but I think it's really helpful to have the focus on the planning as well. So thank you for that. David, as the chair of the Environment Group, Advisory Group, I think we heard from you at the last meeting. So this is literally just the notes that you talked us through already. So I'm assuming you don't want to add anything.
No, nothing to add other than to segue from the last one. Our discussion, our deep dive discussion at that meeting was climate and health. And we looked at the Director of Public Health's annual report. Obviously, there are known benefits of access to nature in terms of people's health.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Okay. Unless anyone's got any other issues on any of that, and I'm not seeing any, then we move on to item 8, which is the forward plan. Kevin, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing in particular to add other than we will be extending the forward programme, obviously, over all the forthcoming meetings of the course of the next municipal year, and taking account of the sort of earlier discussions around things like Oxfordshire and the local area energy planning work. But that's about it, Chair.
Thank you. Has anyone got anything they wanted to flag up to add to the local? No, I was going to say the local plan, to the forward plan. No, I'm not seeing anything. So thank you for that update then. So item 9 on the agenda is updates on matters relevant to the FOP, and I've not had any indicated to me. So unless anyone wants to say anything now, not seeing anyone, I think we can move on to item 10. Which is verbal updates from key strategic partnerships supporting delivery of the Oxfordshire strategic vision. And it includes a number of bodies which are listed there. I was going to talk about the ARC Universities Group dinner, but it occurs to me actually, Alistair, I should have asked you to do that. So do you want to do that?
Yes, I'm very happy to do that. So we recently had an event at Cranfield that involved the ARC Universities Group, but not only the ARC Universities Group, a huge range of associated stakeholders and colleagues and friends and researchers and lots of people. And we also had a governing board meeting at which certain decisions were taken about simplification of the governance. But I think the thing that came out most clearly was the kind of coherence and a kind of slightly new way of working with the 5, what we are calling the 5 at the moment, because we don't have a better name. Actually, that's not a bad name. So the 5 organisations: England's Economic Heartland, East West Rail, the Pan Regional Partnership, the Supercluster Board, and the ARC Universities Group. All kind of going ahead together in concert, with each not being able to achieve anything without the others. And I think that's been a real development those 5 bodies working together has been a real development that has started relatively recently, actually. And I think there was a renewed vigour to go forward together, and we know that this is something that government would much rather deal with these 5 bodies than each individual one. And we also know that what we're calling relatively unknown people who might wind up being politicians in the near future, we know that they are also they're also interested and excited by the possibility of working with these 5 different organisations. And so I think that's kind of a vision of how we're going to go ahead. And there is an event at the QE2 Centre on the 18th of June, I think. And there is also UK Reef coming up. There will be lots of involvement in that. So, I mean, on the one hand, the funding for the PRP actually ends relatively soon, theoretically. But I think the next stage of this journey is to decide how these 5 organisations can all take this together. But I think at the moment, quite a lot of progress is being made. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alistair. It makes a lot of sense. And there, as you say, there's an awful lot of overlap between the different bodies, and they kind of need each other in order to make real progress. So I think it's really welcome. And that certainly seemed to be the feeling in the room. So thank you. Unless anyone's got any questions on that. And I'm not seeing any. I'm going to hand over to you, Liz, to talk about England's economic heartland. I think officially I'm the rep from the FOP on it, but it seems a bit daft for me to report on it when you're the chair. So over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, just to say that we had a very useful meeting actually with everybody in the room. And I was there too, about how we can work more closely together. But actually, England's economic heartland, whilst on the one hand we're looking at things from a regional perspective, there's a lot going on that actually can help us in Oxfordshire. So I just wanted to give you a bit of an update on some of the things that are happening. The first thing to say is that we've been doing a lot of work on bus travel. This was brought about when I became chair. Actually, one of the things I said was we need to think about how we can improve bus services across the region. So we had a bus symposium some time ago, and out of that has come quite a lot of work done by EH, which we as Oxfordshire County Council, FOP, can make good use of, such as, for example, looking at delivery models, looking at stuff that we're probably going to be doing something of in the county anyway, on looking at the feasibility of things like bringing buses into public ownership, etc., or setting up some kind of a different type of relationship with our bus partners so that we can improve bus services, particularly in rural areas. Rural areas being a very big part of what we discussed, because of course a lot of the counties across the EH area are rural, and journey planning and things like that. So that's been extremely useful. The other thing that of course we discuss at each of our meetings is EWR and how that fits into the overall pattern of things. But also the other thing we're doing a lot of work on is mobility hubs, which again fits into what we're doing in Oxfordshire, thinking about how we can bring rail transport, active travel, bus transport all together to encourage people to get out of their cars and use different ways of getting around. So again, there's work going on which we can use ourselves, which is being sponsored by EH, and that's really useful to all of us. And then looking also with East West Rail at what they call their door-to-door connectivity strategy, which basically is the same thing. So looking at how we can build that hub model with EWR as well. And then the other thing to say on this also is that there is a lot of work going on with EH in terms of developing rail connectivity across the region. And one of the things that, I'm not sure if I've mentioned at this meeting, but we have now been told that we are going to go ahead with a connection between Oxford and Swindon and Bristol, which is really important, because that actually goes right the way through the area of the Science Vale, and hopefully that will mean that we can look at developing Grove Station. We're doing a feasibility study in the County Council on that, but also looking at how we can bring forward mobility hubs around places like Culham as well. So all of that, opening up some of those rail services that exist. The line that goes from Oxford to Swindon is used as a freight line, but hasn't been used for passengers for many years. And there's going to be a trial from September of four trains a day on a Saturday. And then on the back of that pilot, it's hoped that will open up the whole of that area. So you've got like connectivity right from Bristol all the way through eventually to Cambridge when EWR opens as well. And all that brings into play as well things like, the Cowley branch line and all the other things that we want to develop around the county. So there's a lot of work going on with EEH at looking at how we can develop that, as well as some of the other lines going towards going to Peterborough and places like that. So all of these connectivity studies are pretty central to what EH is doing. But of course, the other thing to say is that lobbying power is really important. And I think one of the reasons why we've been so successful at getting the Oxford to Bristol line opened is exactly that. It's the lobbying power that we have in partnership with some of the other regional transport, strategic transport boards. And we're working much more in partnership with some of those strategic transport boards as well. So the other thing to say, from an Oxfordshire perspective, is that we've also brought the North Cotswold line into the frame, which previously wasn't involved with EH because it's kind of outside that area. It's sort of halfway between EH and Midlands Connect, and it sort of falls outside both. But in fact, we've now opened up a conversation between EH and the North Cotswold line so that we can start to look at how we're going to be developing that. And just one thing to add in respect of that is that I've got a meeting with the Rail Minister next week to talk about the North Cotswold line and how we can perhaps, who knows, actually get a business case together for doing some work on that line. So all happening. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Liz. It's really helpful, and it's really good to hear all the work that's going on. So sure we all very supportive of everything that you're doing. So thank you. Any questions from anyone? Duncan.
Really encouraged to hear all of that, and particularly the stuff about mobility hubs and enhanced rail. Do we have any ideas about? So the work is done theoretically at EEH and then falls down to the authorities in each individual patch to make use of that work. And we know that there's some money at Oxfordshire County Council for some feasibility study or trial mobility hubs. Are any of those going to be around railway stations?
Yes, they are. I think GWR is looking at doing some work around Didcot. And there's also some talk about doing something around Hanborough as well. But
places where the car parks are full.
Well, yes. But yes, there is work going on. And we've just appointed Pete Brunskill in the County Council as our rail officer on a permanent basis. So he's going to be very much involved in looking at that too.
That's enough, isn't it? I can avow that Peter's excellent, seeing as he came from here. So thank you very much. Anybody else on this item? No? Okay. The next item I think probably want to pick up on is the Local Nature Partnership. So David.
Yeah, the main business of the Local Nature Partnership is the nature recovery strategy, which is currently out for consultation or at a consultation phase. So I guess the request from the Local Nature Partnership is for all the organisations around this table, if they're not already doing so, to give that a bit of a bump because the deadline's coming up at the end of the month, and we want to get as much feedback as we can.
Thank you very much, David. I think we're all doing our bit. We will make sure that we go home and do some more. Thank you very much. The last thing that I was going to raise under this this item is UK Reef, and I've now looked up, or rather Mish has looked up for me, thank you, thank you Mish, what it stands for. So I have to read it out because it's not obvious. Well, it stands for UK Real Estate Investment and Infrastructure, I don't even know what the F stands for, framework? Forum, that makes better sense. So that's what, when people talk about UK Reef, that's what it is. But what it is about 10,000 people coming together in Leeds in May. So it is a really, really big event. It's a 3-day government-sponsored event, and I think it's worth mentioning in this context because a number of bodies which are connected to the Future Oxfordshire Partnership, one way or another, are involved in it. The County Council's going to be there, the City Council's going to be there. I'm going to be there with my Fast Growth Cities hat on. I think that and actually interesting, well, I'll be talking about grid constraints with that hat on. So that's very specifically what I'll be doing. And sitting with the Pan Regional Partnership in terms of doing that work. So I think that there's a whole load of interesting work that we'll be doing there in terms of having some of those discussions. I believe there's a session on green finance, which I assume the county's very involved with, and a session on putting nature at the centre of master plan development. So you'll be pleased to hear that, David. And a session on regional infrastructure investment opportunities across the Pan-Regional Partnership area. So lots of really interesting opportunities to get across some of the key messages that I think, as the Future Oxfordshire Partnership, we've been trying to get across to government. I think, yeah, we'll report back in June as to how we got on. So be interesting to find out. But we were all sort of sitting under the umbrella, I think, of the Oxford-Cambridge PRP's pavilion there. So thank you very much to the PRP for that. Okay, anyone, have I missed anybody's partnership that they feel they want to report on? No, good. Okay, in that case, we're very nearly at the end. The last item on the agenda is the dates of next meetings, and they are set out in the agenda. The next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, the 25th June, and I think at that meeting, Liz, I'll be handing over to you as chair, so make sure you're there. So thank you all very much, and I declare the meeting closed.
Thank you.